Okay, so we've talked about why and what on internationalization at home. So now we need to talk about how it can be implemented. And this section is going to be largely about academic matters, about the formal curriculum, and about how internationalization at home can be implemented in the formal curriculum. So the student learning experience occurs through both the formal and informal curriculum, but really the formal side is the one which we can have probably the greatest influence over. It's also perhaps that which is more difficult, and academics are key to the whole process. Important to remember that curriculum internationalization is going to be different for different subjects in different countries in the world. So the question of what internationalization means is different for different subjects, and it will be up to the academics to work through what this means for them. I'm going to give you some examples of what we did at my university so that you can see what I mean. This is the book by Betty Lesk that I've mentioned a couple of times, Internationalizing the Curriculum, and this is what she says. It's her definition of curriculum internationalization. So it's the incorporation of international, intercultural, global dimensions into the content of the curriculum, the learning outcomes, the assessment tasks, the teaching methods, and the support services of a program of study. And if you're interested in this, I would thoroughly recommend this book. Now, the formal curriculum, as I mentioned earlier, is that which is assessed. And we need to think about what we call the intended learning outcomes that Betty refers to in that definition, because they are the critical building blocks for the curriculum, and they're the starting point for what we can do in terms of internationalizing the curriculum. They explain to us what students will be able to do at the end of the program, and then through assessment we know if they can. So what we did at my university, we got together a group of people from different subject areas, and we looked at their existing learning outcomes in the programs. You can see below there, that's the article which we published this in, and it's in the Journal of Studies in International Education. But I'm trying to give you a little flavour of it here, and obviously you may be more interested in this, and I can give you further information if you wish. So we got a group of academics together who were from all different subjects across the university, and we looked at their learning outcomes to decide how we might change them to make them more internationalized. I think this is a really important point. We shouldn't be thinking about adding an international learning outcome. We should be thinking about changing what we already do, embedding it into an existing program. So in one of the science subjects, there was the learning outcome, debate the ethical responsibilities of science in society with reference to current issues, that students should be able to do this by the end of that particular module in the program. We changed that. The idea was that we changed it to add the idea of in a multicultural society, which the location of our university is very multicultural, and so we could add that, and it was relevant to this subject area. In the next example below that, it was from business, and they were looking at the professional, ethical and legal issues relevant to the professional environment of their discipline. We added the word global to make sure that they were thinking about other countries and what was happening in the international context. And we suggested that they incorporated this into their learning outcomes. Some more examples. This one was from sports science. List the different components of fitness and evaluate their contribution to functional capacity. and we added with appropriate reference to issues of race, gender and cultural context. And again, this really just reinforces the international and intercultural elements that I spoke about earlier. The next one, review the role of the organisation within the changing context of the wider sector. We added the idea of local and global contexts. And then in the final set of examples, oh sorry, that's the same example as the previous one. So, some of the principles, what did we learn from all of this? We were talking about both international and intercultural, as I mentioned, that it's not simply an add-on, but we need to embed these questions into the curriculum for all students. We need to think about how it can be embedded rather than added on to what they're doing. We learned that the discipline itself, the subject area, is absolutely crucial to the success of this, because in nursing, for example, or science or history, each subject in each national and institutional context can be very different. It's also important that the academics teaching in those disciplines understand that internationalization can be different for them from other subjects, and that they realize that their academic culture in that subject is valued when we're talking about internationalization of the curriculum or internationalization at home. So the discipline is the starting point for all of this. The use of learning outcomes is absolutely crucial to achieving this. So what do we want students to be able to do by the end of it? Maybe you don't write learning outcomes in the way that we do at my institution in the examples that I've just shown you. But maybe you have a different way of doing it. But what you expect students to be able to do by the end of the programme is really crucial as a starting point for internationalisation. Now, in order to achieve this, the academic staff are going to be critical to it being successful, but it's quite hard to get them to think differently, especially if they don't have any experience and they haven't had the opportunity to travel to other countries, or they haven't had the opportunity to read about this kind of thing. And so, although they're critical to its success, it can be very difficult to achieve. And so, we're going to look in section 4, in part 4, about how you can get support for achieving this. So those are some of the principles that we learned from trying to internationalise our curriculum. As I said, this is at the heart of the internationalisation at home process, but we also need to think about the informal curriculum, and I'll go on to talk about that in the next section. So using learning outcomes as the starting point for the internationalisation at home process is something that I'd like you to think about. And in particular, I'd like to think about from the perspective of your university, your country or region, how internationalisation at home can be implemented through the curriculum and what this means for the academics in your context, as well as the support staff across the institution. So I'd like you to think about that as the question for this section of the video. Thank you.